This is this is June 4th of 1999. We had 3 cases on the same ranch last month, one on May 4th, one on May 8th, and one on May 23rd. Same ranch up by Cuesta, New Mexico. The funny thing with the UFO, I can't really say that I believe that UFOs are doing this. I would have to say, from all the evidence that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of things where the cow patties are flipped in a complete circle around the carcass. Tree limbs are broken in a downward motion. I have seen skid marks where it looks like a chopper might have bounced. Cows they have to be dropped. We have seen strap marks on their legs where the hide is removed. We had one cow that was dropped with such force that the horn went into the ground, just embedded in the ground. The legs are a lot of times broken. I think whoever is doing this is either pre-marking the cows. It's a silicone type powder that can only be detected under a black light at night, or you have to crawl underneath a tarp with the carcass with a handheld black light in order to see it. I think they're pre-marked. I think later, whatever, a chopper or whatever comes along, shoots the cow with a tranquilizer, knocks it to the ground, picks it up in a harness, off to the lab it goes. They do lab work there, they bring it back and dump it. Why do they bring it back? I have no idea. I had one case down in Los Lunas, south of Albuquerque, where there was a cow that was mutilated there, and it was a Charolais. It's usually a Charolais. It was a Charolais bull, but the ranch that it was on, the rancher didn't have any Charolais bulls. So they missed their mark when they dumped it, I guess. I don't know. But I don't know if it's the government. It might be a sub-government that is doing this. I think they're testing environmental effects on the cows. We eat cows. The things that are gone is the tongue, which comes in direct contact with whatever the animal is eating, the whole digestive system, the rectum, the reproductive system. That whole thing is gone. Now, if you're going to do a random test, what are you going to take? Those are the things you're going to take. And why doesn't whoever's doing this buy their own cows and do this? Why would they, if you're going to do a random test? It seems to run along the 33rd parallel. It seems to happen, and it's a proven fact that it starts the end of April, it ends the end of October. You never really have any in the wintertime, maybe 1 or 2 stragglers. It happens on new moons and full moons within a couple of days of those. Once a rancher's been hit once, the MO is he's going to get hit 3 times, 2 to 3 times the first month. He's going to get hit again maybe 1 or 2 times in the second or third month after this happens. They will probably, whoever they are, they will leave him alone. I would say for another 8 to 9 months, hit him once again, maybe hit him 3 more times after that.
So there's a pretty definite pattern.
There's a pattern to it.
You've anticipated a lot of the questions that I was going to ask you.
Well, if your viewers are thinking about being a cattle mutilation investigator, for God's sakes, you got to protect yourself. There is radiation out there. There is biological chemicals in the carcasses that we have found. So whatever they do, they better double glove. They've got to protect themselves with masks. Do not touch the carcass if it's highly radioactive. They need Geiger counters. They need the best cutting instrument I have found is one of those razor blade knives with the long blades. That's the only thing that I have found that can cut through cowhide fairly easy. They get dull very quickly. Sterilize everything. You will need a compass. You'll need a magnet. You'll need a tarp. And be very careful if there is a tarp that is covering a carcass and you lift that tarp up. Do not inhale any fumes or anything from it. Jerry Valerio, the cattle inspector in Taos, became very, very sick because of that. So there's several precautions that you have to take. You have to treat the area like a crime scene, which means you've got to take soil samples after you have removed the carcass. If you can get a lab that will work with you, this is very, very expensive for necropsies and things. So I take people to dinner a lot. I send Kachina dolls to many of them. It's just warm fuzzies because they'll do my testing for me for nothing. But it's crucial that if you do this investigation, you protect yourself, you get your facts right, you keep the confidentiality of the ranchers above all costs. Once you lose their trust, you can forget about getting any more cases. Okay, now you also want to take soil and grass samples. After you remove the carcass from the scene, you want to take soil samples, grass samples from directly underneath the carcass, a foot out from the carcass in all four directions, 10 feet out from the carcass, 20 feet out, 25 feet out, 30 feet out, 35 feet out, 50 feet out, 100 feet out, 250 feet, 500 feet out, and a mile out. These samples are then sent to the lab and they are tested. The lab I use is the same lab that tests the crop circle samples. Also, if there's any spillage from the carcass, it's more than likely radioactive. Put that spillage in a glass container and send that off to the lab with the dirt and grass samples. What else can I tell you? It's very hairy. I have spent many, many years at this, and I can go at a moment's notice. It's very, very important that you get to the carcass as soon as possible.
Let me ask you a few questions because I read the literature and I hear things and so forth, and I want to know if what I'm hearing is accurate or if it's just kind of a myth that's sprung up, so maybe you can address some of these specifics. A lot of times you hear in cattle mutilation cases that there's no blood in the animal.
You will have a little bit of pooling in the body cavity.
Okay.
Not much. The blood, let me explain something else. If you skin these animals, the meat will be flaky, like it's been in a microwave. A lot of times the blood is cooked. But, I mean, there is blood that is missing. And the heart cavity, the heart muscle itself, will have a little bit of blood in it. But any blood that you will see will be pooling in the body cavity, and there won't be a lot of it.
And the blood is not visible on the ground. So,
no.
So you think that the mutilation is not happening there in the field? It's being.
I don't see how it can happen in the field.
Okay. So it's being taken somewhere and operated on and then brought back.
Right. Exactly.
And I always wonder, why do they bring it back? I mean, if they're going to take it, but why on earth would they bother to bring it back? Because it's just going to alarm people or send a message. I mean, just a missing cow is one thing, but a mutilated cow is something else again.
Right.
Why, if you know, this whole subject is surrounded by secrecy and covert operations, why do they bring
budget, whatever?
Why would they bring it back?
You know, that is a question that I ask on every case. Every mutilation case I go out on, I do a complete interview with the rancher afterwards. And I ask them that question. Why do you think they brought it back? And every time they say, they're doing it to torment me. I have no idea why they bring it back. Maybe they don't want to discard the carcass. Just bring it back and let the rancher do it. You know, he can bury it, whatever. We're not messing with it. So I have no idea why they, or whoever is doing this, is bringing them back.
Okay.
They might have a hard time, you know, getting rid of the carcass, maybe. They might have limited space, especially if they're underground or whatever, where the lab is.
And the reverse of that question would be, why are they taking cattle from ranches? But you've already kind of addressed that.
Why? Why do they take cattle?
Well, I meant, first of all, just from ranches rather than, say, raising their own in pens someplace.
Well, I think it's a random test, but let me explain something to you. A human being, and this is a proven medical thing that they've done, a human being can live on cow's blood out in the field or wherever for 2 days before you need a blood transfusion. It's the only animal that you can live on their blood for 2 days. I also have reports where certain scientific labs are doing tests on cows' tongues for medical purposes and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it is the soft tissues that they're taking.
It's the soft tissues.
They're not taking the good stuff. I mean, you know.
Right.
So presumably they're taking stuff, and you've already mentioned it's what they're eating, the tongue and the soft tissues of the mouth, all the way to the rectum.
Right.
As if they're trying to monitor something in the soil or the food or something.
Well, I've talked to a couple of the ranchers. I've asked them where do they get their feed for their cattle. I did talk to one farmer who raises alfalfa that told me that the government came to him and said that they would fund him if he sprayed a certain pesticide on his alfalfa, and the government guaranteed that the alfalfa would be the best crop he ever had if he used this certain chemical on it. Now, that right there tells me that they're going to test to see what this chemical on this alfalfa does to these cows, because we eat cows. I don't know about the rest of you. I stopped several years ago. But, well, mad cow disease, you know, where did that come from? We're killing ourselves with all these chemicals and things. And now we're finding chemicals, biological chemicals in the carcasses at the labs. So what's going on here?
Yeah, and you've already alluded to helicopters. You mentioned the rancher who was shooting at helicopters.
And there is silent helicopters. I've got a video on one where a dog is sitting on the couch, and the helicopter outside, a couch outside on the porch. A helicopter comes and sits down right next to him. The dog doesn't see it. The dog, you know, is just laying there. Is the dog deaf? No. The chopper leaves, and the owner calls the dog, and the dog's ears pop up, and the dog goes in the house. And that is a helicopter ad that's, you know, on television.
Are helicopters pretty routinely associated with these? I mean, in almost all cases?
Most of your ranchers, if you ask them in your interviews if they have had any mysterious flying objects or anything overhead, they will say, well, I've seen a chopper. It's either before or after their cows have been mutilated. I would say a day before, a day after.
Okay. The cuts, the incisions that are made on the animal, on the carcass.
Cookie cutter cuts. Let me explain something to you. A predator, when it attacks a cow, they bite, they pull. You have ragged edges. This is not the case. And I haven't met a coyote yet that carries a laser.
So these look like they are cut by a laser. I mean, high energy.
It's high. I've got several reports from pathologists stating that high heat was applied at the incision line.
So that the edges look like they've been burned. They're sort of fused.
Let me explain something else. As an investigator, you have got to investigate all aspects to this. So I got in touch with the head of the satanic cult group here in New Mexico. Very strange meeting. And he informed me that yes, they do poach cattle for sacrifices. But when they're done with them, they're a bloody mess. Now, in order to power a laser out in the field that will cut through cowhide, our government has it. It's a portable one. And it will cut through cowhide.
I've also heard that, and this is maybe you can confirm or deny this, that the cuts that are done appear, at least in some cases, not to rupture the individual cells, but
right.
It's as if it's cutting quite neatly between the cells. Exactly.
The lab reports come back and say that it's cut in between the cells.
That's interesting. What kind of can a government laser do that?
I have no idea.
That's pretty far out technology.
Yeah, it is.
I've also heard that predators won't touch these carcasses.
The carcasses, I've seen them where they look mummified. They decompose at such a rapid pace. A mutilated carcass will decompose so quick it's amazing. But the animals will stay away from it. Now, it's amazing to take a dog out on a mutilation case with you. You can tell instantly if it's a true mutilation. The animal will go up and sniff it and walk away right away. If it isn't a true mutilation case, they'll nudge it, they'll try to pick at it. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's good to take a dog with you.
You can use it as a barometer.
Sure you can. Okay. And it's amazing to watch the other cows once you're out on a site. Watch the herd. You go over to the carcass and you start taking samples. The first thing you should do is take videotape of the area before you even touch it. Get some information from the rancher. How old is the cow? When was the last vaccination? Who did he buy it from? What auction house did he go to? I'm right now testing the bloodlines of certain cows to see, okay, here's cows that were born on this ranch. Where were these cows sold? Are these cows being mutilated? Where did they come from?
This almost sounds like a parallel to the abduction phenomenon.
Oh, very much
following
so.
Particular bloodlines.
You have to do that.
Whether human or bovine.
This is blood-based, yes.
Both phenomena.
Very much so.
It's very interesting. You've also said that the animals tend to be toxic. There's some
yes.
Do you know what
toxic.
kind of toxin?
I've seen some reports that say it's a sulfur smell to them. A very bitter, sour smell.
Could it be disinfectant?
A chemical smell. Yeah, could be.
And you also said something about radiation.
There's been radiation at the sites.
Why? Do you have any idea, speculation as to where that comes from or why?
The radiation. Well, my recent case, the one on May 4th, there was some blood spillage, not much, maybe a tablespoon, on the ground. And when I ran my Geiger counter over it, it registered radiation. So I took that sample, put it in a glass jar, and sent it off to the lab. The rest of the area, there was no background radiation or anything. But that one area, yes, there was radiation. Compasses tend to spin.
That's weird.
If you put a compass over a cow that's been mutilated 2 to 3 hours earlier, a very fresh mutilation, if the carcass is still warm, put a compass over it and it will spin.
That's even weirder.
By the neck and head area. After 6 to 7 hours, it won't spin anymore. It will register.
Now, I could understand that if whoever this is picked up a cow, took it somewhere, did whatever it is they do for whatever reason, dumped chemicals on it, exposed it to radiation, etc., etc.
The meat's cooked.
Yeah, like microwave.
Very much so.
But what would make a compass spin? I mean, what would change the magnetic field in the vicinity of the animal?
Your magnetic field does change.
That's weird. That's very interesting. And we don't know why.
Right.
Well, as long as we're in this area of speculation, you don't think it's aliens, or do you?
You know, I go back and forth with each case. I tend to lean more towards some group that's doing this. Is it aliens? Maybe. Is it government? Maybe. Is it some group with black budget? Could be. There is one man by the name of Robert Bigelow that has come on the scene within the last couple years, and got quite a bit of money. I heard that he gets his money from the black budget. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never talked to him. But he supposedly is out investigating mutilations, and I know he is. He's got a group of people out investigating mutilations. Do you ever hear any test results from him or his organization? Not at all. I'm willing to share whatever I have with whoever.
But somebody with possible connections is not.
Exactly. I'm not bad-mouthing him. I'm just saying, hey, let's all work together to try to solve this.
And you've done about, you said maybe 60 of these investigations, and you've noticed some patterns. You've already talked about.
Patterns,
you've
yes.
talked about how this will happen, and there'll be this many, and a couple of weeks later is that, and so forth.
You want to also check the map area. Look for mines, abandoned mines. I know up in the Eagle Nest area there is a mine up there called the Deep Tunnel Mine that's not too far from where these 18 cows were mutilated. You're talking 2-3 miles. So you need to survey the area if you're going to be an investigator of mutilations. You've got to really know your area. You need to talk to other people besides the rancher, because you're going to find out that if a rancher's having mutilations, his neighbor is too.
If you put all these on a map, put little pins, does any kind of interesting pattern emerge that way? What might kind of strike you?
Nuclear testing sites are very close by. I don't know if you've ever, what's the man's name that wrote the book on underground tunnels?
I know you pick it up, but I can't think of his name.
Last name starts with an S. Anyway, he was talking about nuclear sites and things that's close by mutilations.
It's sounding like this is some sort of monitoring scheme.
Oh, I think it's very much monitored.
An environmental monitoring thing.
I've been threatened, and I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to do this probably until it's solved or until the day I die, because it's got me hooked. It's got me hooked.
Well, that's another whole issue to look at. A lot of in a lot of UFO literature, there's a theme that runs through of harassment,
very much so.
Of official and both witness harassment, investigator harassment. It can be in the form of military harassment, or the famous Men in Black and the helicopters and so forth. And you said you've been threatened. Have you had? Has it been official threatening or anonymous?
It was anonymous. I got a phone call one night, and they, in not so many words, told me to either shut up, don't do anything, or you'll be sorry. Now, a very good friend of mine, Jacques Vallée, told me several years ago when I was having breakfast with him and Linda Howe, if you're going to do this, there's two ways you go. You go out, you do your investigations, you hoard all your information, you don't tell anybody anything. To protect yourself, you let everybody know. And that's what I'm doing. I do a lot of interviews, and I just let everybody know I'm here, this is what I'm doing. And I'm not here to make money. You don't make money at this at all. I spend my own gas. To send these samples overnight is very expensive. And you don't make money at this.
Labor love?
Yeah, very much so. I feel sorry for the ranchers. And most of the time these cows are not insured. Not here in New Mexico, they're not. And it's always breeding stock. Always.
Now, I really want to focus on this devastation business because it seems to be key, perhaps, just because it keeps recurring and recurring and recurring, that ultimately everything seems to revolve around that.
I think what is going to kill this human race is going to be airborne. It's going to be terrible viruses.
Now, putting it all together, your experiences as an experiencer and what you've learned and continue to learn from your hands-on field investigations. If you wanted to put it all together and sum it up and tie it up in a package, and I know there's a lot of loose ends, but how would you begin to do it? What would you say if you want?
We're screwed.
Here's the deal. We're screwed.
We're screwed.
Is there any?
This is as good as it gets.
Again, kind of a bleak outlook.
It's not so bleak. I mean, I love life. I enjoy life. I enjoy investigating paranormal stuff because there's something, it gets you. Who or what can be doing this? I'm very strange. I have night vision equipment. I have a 44 Magnum that is loaded all the time. Yeah, it's bleak. It's bleak. Who could be doing this to these innocent cows? I mean, they're just cows. Who could be doing this to them? And for what purposes? It totally amazes me, and I guess that's what's got me hooked.
Well, that's the attraction, and it's also the frustration, is we have so many unanswered questions.
And the thing that gets me is here's all these organizations, different investigators. If we'd all pull our sources, we might come up with something that would be beneficial. But there's a lot of bickering among different organizations, and that's why I'm out on my own.
Independent investigator.
Yeah, and I'll stay that way. You can wave thousands of dollars in my face, and I'm going to say no.
Keeps you free.
Sure does.
Okay. Is there anything else that I haven't brought up that you think is important to?
Oh, there are several things. You know, it's not just cows. It's humans. It's mutilated. There's elk, deer, dogs, cats. It's mostly cattle, sheep. What's the thing with the Chupacabra? What was it? Chupacabra. You know, what was with that? I mean, was that an alien? God only knows. You know, there's so many mysteries. And I never in my wildest dreams growing up would think I would be a paranormal cattle mutilation investigator. I would never even imagine me doing this. But I love it. I enjoy the people I meet, and I've made very good friends. So.
Good. You gonna write a book?
I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer. I'm just an investigator, and I just want to get to the bottom of what's going on.
Well, that's what we got to have, because otherwise we never will.
That's true. True.
I mean, we've got a million unanswered questions, and the only way to begin to answer them is to get out there and get your hands dirty. And
the sad thing is, I don't know if you're aware of the Sherman Ranch up in Utah. Did you talk to Chris about this one?
I'm not sure. Certainly for our viewers.
Okay. The Sherman Ranch is a ranch up in Utah where there was a ranch house that had been vacated. The people that lived there just got up and left. There was still dishes in the cabinets, there was food in the cabinets, clothes in the closets, all of this. And the inhabitants of this ranch house just got up and left. Well, the next thing you know is the ranch is sold to a new rancher. He moves his family in, and things start happening. It's like windows open up to where he opens the front door one morning and there's a UFO out there in the pasture. And so this rancher gets really spooked. He lets 2 of his dogs out one morning, and his dogs are just literally vaporized in the field. There's UFOs out in the field every day. There is aliens in long robes out in the field. He's scared to death to go out the front door. He calls Chris O'Brien. He says, Chris, what can I do? Chris goes up to see him, and evidently he had a videotape of what was going on. He videotaped these UFOs and these aliens. And he told Chris, he said, Chris, he says, I'm scared to death. I need to get out of here. Do you know anyone that would be willing to buy the ranch? Chris says, oh yeah, I know somebody. So he calls Bigelow in Las Vegas. Bigelow finds out about it. He goes and buys the ranch from the guy. And now he's got a fence around it. And do you think we're getting any information from Bigelow as to what's going on? Absolutely not. No. And when Chris was up there, he said that there was deadbolt locks on every door, even the closets.
Wow.
Now, if you lived there and you had to lock yourself in to keep from whatever is outside from coming in, something's going on. And John Alexander, who is one of Bigelow's puppets, is in charge of this ranch up there. And no information's coming out of it. So am I'm not bad-mouthing Bigelow, but let's share the information. Let's all work together. Yeah. That's my main concern with him, is he doesn't share his information.
Yeah, that kind of thing is putting a lid on something.
Very much so. He is buying investigators out in the field. I don't know if he's buying them to shut them up, to control the UFO information, or what it is. He doesn't come forward. He doesn't say anything really about what his organization is doing. They say they're collecting data. I'm waiting to see if they're going to share it with us.
Maybe a long wait.
Yeah, well, I hope they do. You know, I hope they're man enough to share it with the world. I think we have a right to know. Our tax dollars are paying for it.
Yeah. Government accountability. Where is it?
Very much. Where is it? Where is it?
Well, you've given us a lot to chew on.
Yeah. I did a lecture. I'll tell you funny. I did a lecture. Oh, God, it was so funny. And it was right before lunch, and they served steak at lunch.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you inviting us into your home.
Well,
and giving us a couple hours or so of your time.
Well, it's an interesting life, let me say that.
Keep us posted.
Very much so, I will.
Keep us posted.
I will.